The relationship between Israel and Hamas is one of long-standing conflict. Hamas, considered a terrorist organization by many countries, controls the Gaza Strip. Israel, on the other hand, exerts significant control over the West Bank and East Jerusalem. This complex geopolitical situation is rooted in territorial disputes and ideological differences. The two sides have engaged in numerous violent confrontations over the years. These conflicts have resulted in countless casualties and immense suffering for both Palestinians and Israelis. The recent ceasefire agreement, enacted on January 19, 2025, marks a potential turning point in this tumultuous relationship. However, the history of animosity and mistrust casts a long shadow over the agreement's prospects for lasting peace. January 19, 2025, dawned with a glimmer of hope in the Middle East. At 8:30 a.m. local time, a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas went into effect. The agreement, brokered after months of intense negotiations, offered a fragile promise of peace. Exhaustion from the relentless violence gripped both sides. The international community, weary of the seemingly intractable conflict, breathed a collective sigh of relief. However, the ceasefire remained precarious. Deep-seated mistrust and the potential for renewed hostilities loomed large. The world watched with bated breath, hoping against hope that this fragile peace might hold.
The ceasefire agreement, signed in Doha, outlines a phased approach to de-escalation. This agreement marks a significant milestone in the long-standing conflict between Israel and Hamas, aiming to bring a semblance of peace and stability to the region. The negotiations were intense, with both sides making substantial concessions to reach this point. The international community has been closely monitoring these developments, hoping that this agreement will pave the way for a lasting resolution. The first phase, spanning 42 days, focuses on a prisoner exchange. This phase is crucial as it sets the tone for the subsequent stages of the agreement. The release of prisoners is seen as a gesture of goodwill and a step towards building trust between the two sides. The exchange process is being meticulously planned to ensure that it goes smoothly without any hitches. Israel has agreed to release 735 to 1,900 Palestinian prisoners. This range accounts for various categories of detainees, including those held for minor offenses and those who have been imprisoned for longer periods. The release of these prisoners is expected to have a significant impact on Palestinian society, as many families will be reunited after years of separation. In return, Hamas will free 33 Israeli hostages. These hostages have been held under dire conditions, and their release is eagerly anticipated by their families and the Israeli public. The exchange is a delicate operation, requiring coordination and trust from both sides to ensure that it is carried out without any incidents. These hostages include women, children, men over 50, and those in poor health. The inclusion of vulnerable individuals in the exchange highlights the humanitarian aspect of the agreement. Medical teams are on standby to provide immediate care to those who need it, ensuring that their transition back to normal life is as smooth as possible. Subsequent phases will address the remaining hostages and other crucial issues. These phases are designed to tackle the more complex and contentious aspects of the conflict, such as territorial disputes and security arrangements. Each phase builds on the progress made in the previous one, creating a structured path towards a comprehensive peace agreement. These include a complete Israeli withdrawal from Gaza, a lasting ceasefire, and increased humanitarian aid to the beleaguered region. The withdrawal of Israeli forces is a significant step, signaling a shift towards a more peaceful coexistence. Humanitarian aid is crucial for addressing the immediate needs of the population in Gaza, who have been suffering from the effects of the conflict for years. The agreement's phased nature reflects the deep mistrust between the two sides. By breaking down the process into manageable steps, both parties can build confidence incrementally. This approach allows for adjustments and reassurances at each stage, reducing the risk of setbacks and misunderstandings. Each step hinges on the successful implementation of the previous one. This interdependence ensures that both sides remain committed to the process, knowing that any deviation could jeopardize the entire agreement. The phased approach also provides a framework for international observers to monitor and verify compliance, adding an extra layer of accountability.
The world watches closely, hoping that each phase of the agreement will be successfully implemented. The international community, including key stakeholders like the United Nations and major world powers, have expressed their support for the agreement. They are ready to provide assistance and mediation if needed to ensure that the process stays on track, paving the way for a more stable and peaceful future in the region. The ultimate goal is to create an environment where future generations can grow up without the shadow of conflict. This agreement, if successfully implemented, could serve as a blueprint for resolving other long-standing conflicts around the world, demonstrating the power of diplomacy and negotiation. Section 4. The Road to Ceasefire. Key Events and Negotiations. The ceasefire agreement came after a series of intense events and protracted negotiations. The journey to this point was fraught with challenges, setbacks, and moments of hope. Over several weeks, the international community watched closely as the situation evolved, with each day bringing new developments and heightened tensions. International mediation played a crucial role in bringing the two sides to the table. Diplomats from various countries worked tirelessly behind the scenes, often late into the night, to bridge the gaps between the conflicting parties. Their efforts were instrumental in creating an environment conducive to dialogue and compromise. Egypt and Qatar, with support from the United States, exerted significant diplomatic pressure. These nations leveraged their unique positions and relationships to facilitate communication and propose solutions. Their involvement was critical in maintaining momentum and ensuring that discussions did not stall. The final days leading up to the agreement witnessed a flurry of diplomatic activity. Meetings were held in rapid succession, and negotiators moved swiftly between capitals. The urgency of the situation was palpable, with every moment bringing the possibility of either breakthrough or breakdown. Phone calls between world leaders intensified, and envoys shuttled back and forth between Gaza and Tel Aviv. These communications were crucial in ironing out the final details of the agreement and ensuring that all parties were on the same page. The logistical challenges were immense, but the determination to achieve peace was even greater. The final hours were particularly tense. As the deadline approached, the pressure mounted on all sides. Negotiators faced immense stress, knowing that the stakes were incredibly high. Every word and gesture was scrutinized, and the atmosphere was charged with anticipation and anxiety. Even after the ceasefire announcement, Israeli airstrikes continued in Gaza, claiming more lives. The situation on the ground remained volatile, and the humanitarian crisis deepened. The international community called for restraint and urged both sides to honor the ceasefire agreement. Finally, after a marathon 6-hour meeting, the Israeli cabinet approved the deal, paving the way for the fragile peace. This decision marked a significant milestone, but it was clear that much work remained to be done. The path to lasting peace would require continued effort, vigilance, and goodwill from all parties involved. Section 5. A divided Israel political landscape and dissent. While the ceasefire agreement brought a sigh of relief to many, it also exposed deep divisions within Israel. The public's reaction was mixed, with some celebrating the end of hostilities and others feeling betrayed by what they perceived as a premature halt to the conflict. The streets of major cities like Tel Aviv and Jerusalem saw both celebrations and protests, highlighting the stark contrast in public opinion. Prime Minister Netanyahu presented the deal as a victory. In a televised address, he assured the nation that the ceasefire was a strategic move that would ensure long-term security. He emphasized that the military objectives had been achieved, and that the ceasefire was a tactical decision to prevent further loss of life. He highlighted Hamas's supposed capitulation, and emphasized the support received from both the Biden and Trump administrations. Netanyahu pointed out that the international backing was a testament to Israel's strong diplomatic relations and its ability to garner support from major global powers, regardless of their political differences.
However, this narrative faced substantial opposition from within his own government. Members of his coalition argued that the ceasefire was a sign of weakness and that it would embolden Hamas and other adversaries. The debate within the Knesset was intense, with heated arguments and accusations flying across the aisle. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir resigned in protest, denouncing the deal as a surrender to terrorism. In a fiery press conference, Ben-Gvir accused Netanyahu of compromising Israel's security and vowed to continue his fight from outside the government. His resignation was a significant blow to the coalition, signaling deep fractures within the ruling party. Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich threatened to follow suit if the war didn't resume after the initial phase. Smotrich, a key figure in the government, argued that the ceasefire was merely a temporary pause and that Israel needed to maintain its military pressure to ensure lasting peace. His ultimatum added to the growing tension within the government. These resignations underscore the fragility of the peace and the potential for internal political turmoil within Israel. The government's stability is now in question, with the possibility of more resignations and a potential collapse of the coalition. The coming weeks will be crucial in determining whether the ceasefire will hold and if the government can navigate through this period of intense political strife.
Section 6. Global reactions, from applause to apprehension. The international community's response to the ceasefire has been largely positive, but with a cautious undertone. The G7 nations welcomed the agreement, emphasizing the need for a two-state solution.
The United States, while expressing support for Israel, also cautioned Hamas against violating the ceasefire. Incoming U.S. President Donald Trump echoed this sentiment, promising swift repercussions should Hamas break the truce. Hezbollah, on the other hand, congratulated the Palestinians, framing the ceasefire as a victory for resistance. This range of reactions reflects the complex geopolitical landscape surrounding the Israel-Palestine conflict.